Hello there. My name is Ulrich Röhlen from the corporation Claytec, building materials out of clay. In Germany, I'm technical leader and sales manager, and I'm within the company since the very first day. Let me open my file, please. Sorry. Okay, here we go. I want to tell you something about two building materials which fits very good together and which are very old. Two human building fellows with a great future potential, a great past and a great future potential. The first picture I want to show you is of the foundation walls in the city of Uruk in Iraq, one of the oldest or the oldest city in the world of human beings. And we find there clay and straw in the foundation walls 5,000 years old. You see the straw is bright and golden, and the clay is sterile. So if anyone says these weak or soft materials are only for a short time, then you can show him this picture. We know clay and straw from the time when our corporation was a craftsman, from historical timber constructions for the filling of the timber frameworks and the plaster inside, and they added very much straw, and so they had a very simple interior insulation. And all the hundreds of years where timber frameworks was filled up with clay, straw and clay worked together very good. This is a picture of the year of 1984. We started the cooperation. It's the owner on the right side, and my friend Peter Breidenbach. He's the owner of Claytec today. And I worked with him all these years along. And here we are making on the building side light clay, straw clay, light straw clay, after the Receptum book of Franz Vollert in this year. These were the first building sites we did the inside insulation, this materials, and in this times, the early 80s, it was the beginning of the modern earth building movements in Germany and in Europe. We have very good things to do for the house user with our clay materials. First, it's the indoor air quality. We are able with this material to take many humid out of the air, many smellings and other things. And you see here the difference, for example, between a machine gypsum plaster. It's only 10 gram per square meter. With the clay plaster, we get in this showing here 72, and it's 80 or 19 gram is usually today. We have the environmental protection. If you use the clay out of the soil, out of the ground, we call it earth humid. We have, you see, 0.007, like James Bond, clay with our clay plaster of CO2 emissions. If you see the lime plaster, the cement plaster, the gypsum plaster, they are burnt, they are fired, they are dried, and we have a lot of more environmental problems with this. And we can do real very good noise protection, noise insulation. You see, we have 10 dB more than other dry construction which are made in the same kind. The arguments for clay is first for the environmental climate, for the climate in the room, it's health. There's no poison or no chemical substances getting out of this material. It's only pure earth and soil. So we have a very good indoor air quality. I talked about this in case of the humid in the room. we have very nice, very beautiful surfaces of this natural material. I'm very sure we would not be so successful with this material if it was not so beautiful as it is. And we have just this ecological qualities I talked about, and they work very well together with the ecological qualities of the straw bale constructions and of the straw. The arguments for clay and straw, there are, we have two natural materials for use as building materials without any additives and without any changing. We take it from the nature and we use it as building materials. We have maybe a little bit the same with natural stones and we have the same with wood, but with no other building material we have this, that we are that it is possible to work with them so as we take it from the nature. The clay, it's ecological building without a compromise. I think if you make up a straw bale house and plaster it with a thick clay plaster, it's ecological building without compromise. More for the ecologic you cannot do. The straw in this way make the insulation, the warmth insulation, and the clay breathes. He takes the humid in the room, takes it, give it in the room back, let it go through the walls, and so on. And this works very, very good together. And we have a perfect plaster adhesion. You see, we have on the straw bale thin and thick plaster areas, and clay is very good for it. This very easy to work with. You only spray it on the straw bale, of if it is thick or if it is thin. No problem. You can do it with two layers, and you have the straw covered. And the addition is very, very good. It fixes very good on the straw surface. Let me tell you how clay products, how Claytec products are used nowadays. I see, this is, so it's, it's coming in English. I will make it up. Okay. First, we have the fine finish surfaces. These are made of colored clay. We do not put any colors or pigments within within the plaster, but we look in the nature for the red, the yellow, the green, the brown clay, and find it and add it only with bright sand, with the white sand, and have these wonderful colors. And we can realize 146 natural colors with our color system. We got this as a plaster, 2 mil thick. We got it as, how is it called? Don't know the word. Very smooth material, spatula, yeah, which we can make very smooth surfaces, and as a painting as well. And this is very important for all kind of buildings. But the main thing is clay plasters on any rough surfaces. So we can work on any brickwork, we can work on concrete, on clay bricks, and just as I said, very, very well on straw bales. And this is the most important part of what we are doing, the simple clay plasters. On the left side, you find the clay dry building. This techniques raised in the last few years very, very well. This is a very young development and movement, and we have several dry boards which are only finished with a thin layer, for mostly together with modern wooden construction used. On the right side, you find the timber frame restoration. It's still very important for us. The historical buildings in Germany, or for example in France and in England, and then the inside insulation, which is done with wooden fiberboards nowadays, not only with straw clay. This whole thing of restoration is a very important part of clay building still. The masonry and the rammed earth are not so important. You find always a few samples where it is used, and they are very often printed in the press, but they are not done so often. Maybe with the masonry there it will be a changing in a few years because there's a new DIN standard now made of set of for realizing load-bearing constructions out of clay bricks. I will show you some materials which are used in straw construction. Very nice example we see here. Um, it's the most important material is the clay undercoat plaster with straw. We produce this since 1990. It's more or less, yes, since 1985 on our own building sites, and the recept is unchanged for 35 years. It's a perfect material, perfect building material, and it's one of the important ones we got. And it's just only made out of clay and straw, as you see on the left side. You can use it with hand, with a trowel, or with a machine to spray it on. And this is for the straw bale building walls a very good kind of application. We have the materials in the earth humid way. This is that what we like very much, because it's more or less no energy within, and we have it dry as well, for example for gypsum plaster machines and other things. You can use it normally in a thickness between 8 and 50 mils, but as I said, you can do it far thicker. On the straw, you can work till 35 mils without any problem. This is just the most important material for straw building. We have a top coat plaster then on this, which is built up with a very fine grain and very fine fiber. And with this material, you can do easy and fast the finish on the rough plaster. You have then a surface that you can paint with the color made out of clay, for example. You can apply this with a machine too, but usually it's done with a trowel. And we have here it only dry material because the layers are very thin, and so the fine grain would be not so easy to do it earth humid. An interesting material, maybe just for us here, is the plaster course bright with straw. It's a little bit the surface like lime. You can paint it as we see it here, but you can also leave it as it is. We have straw inside, and so you have a bright, nearly white or light gray plaster with the straw on the surface. Very nice, just for straw building houses. And these are the design plasters, 146 natural earth tones. As I told, we have several additives we can do, plant additives and mineral additives, and it is usual brought on with a trowel in a thickness of 2 mils, and yes, in different colors. When we have this as well as a spatula and paint. Here you see it in detail. This is a thickness of 2 mils here, and this is a surface, for example, for the surface of a green plaster. And here you get this on the fine-grained plaster as a painting. And last not least, in the Strawberry building, there might be interior walls, for example, just for the static may be used, or you need inside walls which are thinner. And we have several dry building materials for this. First of all, the clay board, which we found in the year of 1996. It's the first board on the market, which was produced, and we sell it very successful till today. Usually it's applied with a screw on timber frame construction, as we see here on the left side. We have it as well as a dry plaster board. If you have, for example, OSB surfaces or other panels made of wooden material, you can fix it with this, what's the name for it? Klammern in German, on the wooden surface in a dry way, and then do only the thin finish as we saw it a few files ago. So this both possibilities, a clay board for timber frame construction of inside walls, and for applying on wooden on wooden panels as OSB or ESB, for example. We have the same in a heavy way with a density of, yes, it's 1.600, maybe more reality. It's in the reality, it's 1.500. It's a heavy board with which you can bring very much clay in the room for the room climate, and for the warmth restoration in summer. A picture of a building site where the clay is applied. You see here a product which is reed mats. Here in this case, it's done over the beams or over the wooden construction parts and the straw. This would be not ever necessary, but for example, you can do it this way. It would be enough as well to put it just only on the wood. Yes, it is a material we developed in the 80s out of the reed, and it's a very, very good match for the rough grain of the earth humid clay plasters. If you have to cover some other surfaces with clay plaster. Yes, these were few materials which are interesting to work with straw and clay together. And here at last, reference of Grünspecht, of the cooperation Grünspecht of Markus Wolf, a very interesting private apartment building with straw isolated. And the interesting thing is that this building, which is an additive to an existing building, work like a new building if you see it. It's very nice done, very interesting cubus, and very nice looks inside everywhere. Here you see the clay plaster with round corners done with, I think, which fits very good to the straw bale construction and to the kind of material and the aesthetic of the clay plaster. So thank you very much. These were the things I wanted to tell about clay in straw building construction, and I will be glad if you have some questions to answer them. For this moment, I say bye and thank you for listening.